It's such a pleasure to be here. My name is Chetan Jain. I am a partner at Deloitte, and I have the privilege of leading our human capital AI business. So today, we have been talking for the last day or so how AI is everywhere. AI is the new age electricity. AI is the fifth industrial revolution. And AI is ubiquitous. And when I say ubiquitous, a lot of us actually carry AI in our pockets today, right? So this is an AI assistant. You may call it an iPhone, or you may call it Android, based on your choice, essentially, but it's really an AI assistant. And then how many of you guys took like an Uber ride or a Lyft ride when you arrived here in San Francisco, right? Like majority of the folks here. So let's reflect on that experience for a second. When you actually avail of a ride-sharing service, and it takes you from point A to point B, it's all powered by AI algorithms. So we're living, breathing AI every single day, even though we may not recognize it. So what does it really mean to go all in on AI for companies that are not tech-centric? So not Googles, 8-4s, or Microsofts of the world, really for mainstream companies, consumer companies, financial companies, what does it really mean for them to go all in on AI? And that was the topic of research for our AI strategic growth offering leader, Nitin Mittal and Tom Davenport. They actually did a very extensive research of companies around the world to really think about what are the characteristics of those organizations that are fully committed to going all in on AI. Who are those trailblazers, at the very top? And the list is not very long. It's about 30 companies around the world that they found and interviewed. And they actually wrote a book on all in on AI. What does it really take to get on that journey from an AI adoption, AI transformation perspective? So for the first 10 minutes today, I will talk a little bit about what are those factors, what are those characteristics that enable organizations to transform using the power of AI. And then for the next 20 minutes or so, I'll have the opportunity to facilitate a panel discussion with some of my colleagues from Deloitte around how leaders are preparing workers for future in the context of AI. All right, so the first factor that comes here, and this was obviously as a human capital consultant, human capital practitioner, this was music to my ears, and I think it will be to many of you guys. The most important factor in getting that you have to get right in order to have an AI-powered organization is the human side. So the first thing is leadership. The CEO, and Josh talked about collaboration across the C-suite. The CEO, as well as collaboration across the C-suite in making sustained investments in AI is a key priority. The tone gets set at the top, and then, of course, it cascades from there. And the All In on AI book highlights some examples of leaders that have actually done this remarkably well. There is a bank in Singapore, DBS Bank, where the CEO, Piyush Gupta, has actually set the stage in the organization where every aspect of their business, front office, back office, is now powered by AI, primarily due to his leadership and vision. So that's absolutely incredibly important. The second thing is culture. So a really interesting thing that we have learned over the last couple of years is it's very important to make sure that we are not treating AI as just another technology, another application. It's really a new way of thinking. It's a new way of being. Josh talked a little bit about digital, right? So it's basically taking, how do you be digital? Instead of just thinking digital, how do you be digital to the next level in terms of thinking of AI in a similar fashion? So really focusing on not focusing on AI just as another technology that you're going to roll out. It's just how you're going to think going forward. That cultural change is extremely important. And there's obviously a lot of discussion around robots are coming and taking away the jobs of humans. We actually fundamentally believe that humans will not be replaced by robots. Humans will be replaced by humans that are using AI. So that's the subtle difference. And it's very important to think of AI as an augmented worker. So instead of really thinking as this AI thing coming over and taking over the world, really how can we think of it as an inorganic augmented worker? And really that changes the dialogue, that changes the whole attitude around how you can use AI to power your enterprise to really take your digital transformation to the next level. And the last thing here is skills. This whole conference, of course, is heavily focused on skills with the Eightfold platform. How do you develop skills of the future? From a human capital trends perspective that you'll hear from our panelists, we have identified that we are at the end of jobs, right? We are transitioning from jobs to skills in future. So really, how do you develop the skills of your organization's workforce to really thrive in the context of AI? And of course, there's a lot of ink on the technical skills, the machine learning skills, the programming skills from an AI perspective. But what we really have to focus on as businesses is to enable our business professionals, the business analysts, folks that are in this room that may not be heavy technical, is to really focus on what are the implications and applications of AI. So those are the skills we're talking about. What are the ethical implications of AI? What are the applications that you can have in your organizations without creating a bias in the system as well? So I think those skills are extremely important. And the organizations that go all in on AI really have to get these right. The second is executing AI strategies with a clear ambition. So begin with the end in mind. So really focusing on how do you get the right people to have the conversations? So AI is not just a domain of conversations for machine learning experts or technologists. How do you get strategy people in the room? How do you get HR in the room in terms of providing inputs relative to how AI can improve your business? How do you make money with AI? Like, this is something that organizations can grapple with as well. How can you create a competitive advantage from a talent perspective with AI? And the book actually highlights a couple of strategic archetypes when it comes to executing AI strategies with a clear ambition. One of the archetypes is starting something new. So AI can enable organizations to come up with new businesses, new business ideas, new ecosystems, new offerings, and so on and so forth. The second archetype, which is probably most relevant for folks in this room, is transforming your operations. So dramatically transforming your operations from an efficiency and effectiveness perspective. Now, that could be HR operations, that could be IT operations. And then the third is influencing customer behavior. So can you use AI so that people can live more healthy lives, so that they can manage their financial well-being better, so that they can drive their vehicles better? As we all know, technology is continuing to grow at an exponential pace. And Ashu showed us the progress of computational power on the graphs that we saw yesterday. So humans are not going to be able to catch up to the pace of technology. So it's really how do you embrace technology and propel your ambition for the organization is what we have to focus on. The third piece is technology and data. So of course, as we talked about, human side being the most differentiating, most challenging to get AI right in your organization. Of course, you can't really do anything with AI without huge amounts of technology and huge amounts of data. So organizations that go all in on AI, certainly leverage technology with data as the fuel. And of course, this is where you can look at partners like Eightfold or other organizations, or you can develop these capabilities in-house. But really creating a broad AI toolkit using different use cases and getting to scale. So there's a lot of organizations that do a lot of pilots, but you don't really achieve success unless you scale to production. So really figuring out how do you get AI quickly in production and scale. And then finally, improving IT operations with AI. IT, of course, this seems more inwardly focused, but obviously IT and technology departments play a pretty significant role in organizations, mainstream organizations. And AI can certainly enable them. I mean, this is something that we also found in our Deloitte survey, that IT can be a pretty significant consumer of AI technologies to really bring more efficiencies to their operations. And then the last factor here that I wanted to talk about before I bring the panel up is growing business capabilities. So as HR professionals, as IT professionals, talent professionals that are in this room, really think about what are the use cases for HR. And of course, this applies to any other function as well. What are the use cases to propel your organization forward? And having a library of those use cases, and then really figuring out technology. The role that data can play in decision making, availability of AI resources. So that can be people, technology, and then, of course, once you have all of that established, having a framework, having a trustworthy AI framework in place to have policies so that you have ethical use of AI. So those are some of the findings from the book, some of the considerations. So with that, I want to pivot to the next part of our agenda, where we'll talk about how leaders can prepare workers for the future. All right, so let's start with some brief introductions. David, let's start with you.
Sure. As introduced, I'm David Mallon. I lead our Insights to Action team with Deloitte Human Capital Consulting. You might have noticed in our previous incarnation, and I'm always thrilled to have Josh in the room because we were part of what had been the Burson research team within Deloitte for a number of years. I also am here today with one of my other hats on, which is one of the authors of our annual Global Human Capital Trend Study.
Great. John?
Hi, everybody. John Brownridge. I'm a partner with Deloitte. Been in the HR transformation space 25 years. Been with Deloitte 15, and I'm one of the leaders in our HR transformation practice, and I specifically focus on strategy for that practice. I'm also leading an effort around digital workplace and how we help organizations rethink how we interact with technology for the betterment of the organization and the employee experience.
And Sana?
Hi, everyone. Sana Monzo. I'm a leader in our workforce transformation practice. I've been both a talent acquisition leader and a consultant in human capital for over 25 years. And I have the pleasure of having worked with Eightfold over the last 4 years and serve as our Eightfold Alliance leader in that capacity as well.
Great. So David, I want to start with you. As one of the authors of our Human Capital Trends report, can you talk a little bit about the research and some of the themes from the report?
Sure. So I'm guessing many of you in the room are probably familiar with that study. We've been doing it for more than a decade now. We think it's the longest and largest look at kind of what are those big challenges for us in the human capital space year over year. I actually like to describe it as currents, because it's actually not predictions. It's not us looking to the future. It's us. When you stand in the river, when you stand in the ocean, you feel these forces that are pushing you some other place. That's what we're trying to get at year over year, is that what are those currents? Can we give them a name that are forcing us to different spaces with regards to our people and the decisions we make about them? This year, as we started to do the project, we realized that we were feeling something different. It wasn't just a notion of, well, maybe there's some trends we've been talking about for years, and what's the next new version of? Or in some cases, maybe what are some new currents we're just finding our way in? In this case, it felt like the boundaries themselves are starting to be in question. So as leaders, we go in, we just assume that a job's a job. We just assume that the work happens in a workplace. We just assume that the workforce is made up of a certain set of people. And those basic assumptions are being questioned right now. The boundaries are falling away, and organizations are needing to think about how they, with their workforces, rewrite new ones, or kind of come up or renegotiate new boundaries, new definitions for work, new definitions for workforce, new definitions for workplace. So those are the kind of underlying ideas, I think, that we're playing with.
Wonderful. And then as we look at this, there are certain themes here, like navigating the end of jobs. We've talked about how what that means in the context of skills transformation, and then powering human impact with technology. Of course, we are at an AI conference. So tell us a little bit about what leaders can learn from these findings to help inform their approach.
Sure. Well, as you said, the end of jobs one, it's not like the job itself is going away. I mean, of course, that's a great headline. It grabs attention, right? But what is true, and Josh talked about it, I've heard it talked about by several others even the last couple of days, and is this notion of the basic proxies that we used. Because as we moved into the first industrial revolution, we started to need to describe the work in useful ways. We needed to describe it. We put boxes around it. As organizations got larger and more complex, we needed this proxy, which was the job description, the position description. And on the other side, from the worker's point of view, we needed this proxy, which was the CV or the resume. These were the ways that we could, at scale, describe work and worker and put them together. And what we're realizing is those proxies themselves are not fit for purpose. We're not very good at organizations right now at actually describing the value that's being created in the work itself. So how do we get closer to that? How do we use a more granular set of lenses? And that's what's happening with this notion of skills. And it's the current best bet for how do we, in a more granular way, describe exactly what we need, right? And so what leaders should be doing here is starting to think that way, starting to shift to our mindset of Rather than thinking in those boxes, those original proxies, collect as much data as you possibly can about the worker, and that intersection. So right now, that is skills and skills data. And then try to be making decisions with that versus those old proxies. In terms of the second one, the impact with technology, the big shift there is, if you've followed our work on humans and technologies for a few years, we've been talking about this notion of, and I think Chetan actually referenced it too. We have this long history in business of using technology to replace people, let's be really clear, to substitute for humans, right? We've started over the last few decades to also think about how we augment people. How do we make them better, right? We're now thinking about technology as teammate. It's our collaborator. It is not just to do either of those first two things. But here's the thing. In this world in which the technology is getting faster and faster, better and better and better, it actually has the ability, and we're seeing this now in terms of how we're all interacting with something like generative AI, it's actually a mirror showing us our humanity. It's actually helping us to be more human or identify what is essentially human. So when we think about how we use technology in the workplace, start from a premise of, rather than just thinking, hey, let's use technology to redesign the work, let's take technology to help the worker and make that the first proposition, not come to sort of human factors or interface design sort of 2 or 3 stops down the line. How do we use technology? We have great tools in our hands right now, things like nudges and what have you, to really think about improving and advancing humans, advancing human behavior, the best of what makes us humans, and so on.
Great. Thank you, David. So now I want to go to you. I know you've done a lot of work around skills. So tell us a little bit about how Deloitte, your team, has been assessing the journey that organizations are on to incorporate skills into their strategy.
So one of the things that we know, and we've been having this conversation about skills, that obviously organizations are on a journey to do this. And they're at a different point on that journey. But we did a study of over 1,200 individuals to really get insights on what this journey is looking like across industries, across sizes of organizations. And while we can see here, a vast majority of these groups are on that journey to becoming more of a skills-based organization, the actual activities that they're taking along the way are not scaling across the organization in a clear and repeatable way, right? So that journey is something that we are going to continue to look at. And one of the reasons that we really felt this powerful connection with Eightfold was the purpose, vision, strategy of taking this opportunity to inform the skills-based journey by the talent intelligence that comes to light. So as we go on there, I think, Chetan, what we're thinking about is the insights from the study were really interesting because we looked at not only how are leaders looking at this from a skills perspective, but what were workers feeling about this skills-based journey as well. And so while traditionally we think about it from a talent acquisition perspective, or even talent marketplace and opportunity marketplaces that have been evolving over the last few years, these are just kind of scratching the surface. We heard about today the focus on the workers' perspective on their income, right? So taking a look at the skills-based strategies as it relates to compensation is also growing. So you can see here this movement from jobs to skills is really transformative, where we're thinking about the ways that we can start getting those insights. And the number of organizations that are committed to doing this or have taken action is continuing to grow, but those that are experimenting, as you can see, are really growing as well. So let's go on to the next one, because I think there's an interesting correlation to what Ashi was talking about yesterday. Like, what is the impact of skills? And when we think about really being able to have careers for everyone in the world, it's a really heady concept, right? And so skills-based organizations, what we have found, are having a significant impact. They're having an impact in terms of the way that we acquire and we place talent, the way that we move that talent through our organizations, certainly on the way in which we're able to develop that talent. And I think that's the key theme here is that we're starting to break down those silos that we've traditionally had, where talent acquisition was working separately from talent management, working separately even from our contingent workforce strategy. We really have to think about it from a broader workforce ecosystem perspective to really start reaping those rewards. And so I think that those insights that we're getting from talent intelligence and coupling that with the ways in which we can wrap around our policies and our strategies with skills-based strategies are really what's going to start to make a difference.
Great, thanks, Sona. John, I'll come to you. With your focus on digital workplace services, can you talk a little bit about how leaders can learn relative to the relationship between productivity and experience?
Yeah. So we've been on a journey around digital experience, digital workplace for, as a company for the last 20 years. I focused on it with a team for about the last 4 years. And we've uncovered some interesting things and some interesting correlation as we've looked at how people work and how it's changed over time. So a couple of kind of points to get us going here. In 2014, the average response time for an email was 4 hours. Today, it stands at 2 minutes, which shows a massive difference in how we work. We're also spending nearly 3 times as much of our time in meetings than we did versus before the pandemic, 2020, early 2020. And so if you measure what we're doing and productivity, we're doing a lot more email, we're doing a lot more meetings, but we're not reaping the rewards in terms of productivity. We're also understanding that how people are spending their time is not necessarily valuable. 40% of people's time is spent on work about work or low to no value activities, which is a massive drain on resources, on the resources of our people. That roughly translates to about 1 trillion hours a year wasted globally in the knowledge industry. So if you times that by your favorite number for average global cost per employee, that's how many trillions of dollars we're wasting every year on how we're structuring work in organizations today. And what have we done to try and solve some of this? Well, we've thrown a lot of technology into the mix to try and help with collaboration, especially during the pandemic when we were all working remotely, or for the most part, the knowledge workers were working remotely. And that's actually compounded a whole bunch of issues because now we have more technology that's pinging us, that's notifying us, that's taking our attention and actually impacting our ability to be able to have deep work, think deeply on the activities that we're responsible for, and even collaborate in a productive way if we're supposed to be having, each other's attention while we're collaborating. And we're being pinged in 6 different ways. We're really not focused on the task at hand with our colleagues to be able to effectively collaborate. And so on the other side of the coin, what we found was that people who are in organizations that are in the top quartile for employee experience are actually 12 times more productive. Their organizations are 25%, I'm getting excited, 25% more profitable, and their employees are 3 times more likely to be excited to come into work. And we know that when we're doing our best work, like most organizations have some version of a vision that says we want to create an environment where people can do the best work of their lives. Some version of that for any people organization. We're not currently doing that clearly, as the data suggests. But what we are recognizing is if we can increase productivity for people, they're much happier. We all know when we've done a good day's work, we've got the things done that we want to get done, we've collaborated in the right way, we've achieved things, we feel energized by that. And the converse is true. If we are bogged down with activities that are really not adding value and we know it, our energy is low. And when our energy is low, our productivity becomes low for the next activity. So there's this amplification effect between employee experience, positive employee experience, and positive productivity. And this is interesting because AI is allowing us to be able to solve some of those problems today, right? It's allowing us to be able to figure out how much time should we be spending on focus work, how to collaborate, how to set boundaries, how to automate elements of what we do to give us more time for higher value activities. And another thing that it's doing, it won't do it by itself. There are other elements that need to be considered, like human-centered design in how we design work going forward. How do we measure it and get feedback on the changes that we're making to make sure we're not having a negative impact in other areas? How are we adopting new ways of working enabled by technology to improve the productivity and experience? And ultimately, how are we creating an environment where we know we're on a journey to make this better, because we're not going to make it better overnight? The interesting connection I think we have as well with skills-based is that one of the large factors in what makes someone happy in their work is the work that they're doing, and it fit for their purpose, and do they have development opportunities? I think this is where there's a huge connection between kind of the work that I'm doing and my team are doing and the possibilities that we're talking about today around skills-based.
Oh, I think that's so true, John. And when you think about the work that people in a particular area like talent acquisition are doing, I think back to when I was a recruiter or recruiting leader, to have the tools that we could have today with Eightfold, where we're able to get that talent intelligence, really informing our understanding of the talent communities, being able to do talent rediscovery and understand the investments that we've made in building these large communities to actually match them against existing opportunities and the future opportunities that we know the organization have. That is something we could only have dreamed of. And so I'm having a lot of conversations with many of you in the audience and other customers just about the impact of this experience that AI can have and having this powerful talent intelligence to understand the skills in the overall global employment network, as well as that skill set that we have internally. And so really it's back to how do we break down some of those silos that we've had in the past, where we were focused on talent acquisition, we were focused on talent management and retention, we were focused on how we might fulfill employment needs in other ways, and really thinking about this as a journey with skills at the center. So put your hat on, if you will, for a minute as a worker, and it really starts from the time in which there's awareness in the market, right? How are we helping connect the dots for individuals about the skills that they have and what this organization can actually offer to them in terms of opportunities. Not only opportunities to come into this organization, but opportunities for the future as well. And I think the key differentiator here is really changing that candidate experience so that they are no longer having to do keyword searches and filter based on at certain locations or other aspects, but truly being served up through the AI capability and transparent AI, how their skills match opportunities. And there's a great story, actually, my good friend Jason Serrato from Eightfold shared when he was interested in looking at Eightfold. And it served up to him opportunities that were different than he would have anticipated. And ultimately, he's wound up in a new type of role that takes great advantage of his skills. And we see that theme repeating over and over again. So really, this is intended just to look at this from a journey map perspective, talk about how we can infuse AI in terms of the experience from becoming a prospect in the market through that journey of going through the recruiting process. But really, it doesn't stop there, right? It's making sure that as an individual comes into the organization, they have an understanding of how the skills they have today not only inform the way they'll be able to do their new role, but what sort of tools will they have to continue to enhance their skills portfolio? And how will that inform their own career journey? And so it's things like unlocking mentors, unlocking community connections for individuals that have skills that they want to get connected with or want to grow into. It's about looking at talent marketplace sort of opportunities for project-based work that grow skills or help unlock unused potential in organizations. And really carrying that through the relationship with their manager or their mentors to talk about the skills they have. Where is this organization going? Where am I going? And how do I continue to evolve those skill sets? So we really look at this as a transformation, not only in terms of being able to leverage that talent intelligence to do that matching, but really when we think about that connection in terms of the purpose someone has in their own career and improving that experience so that they are more fulfilled, right? And ultimately, I think that's one of the key goals we're all looking at for, as we term it, making humans better at work and work better for humans.
Certainly appreciate your insights. Everyone, thanks so much for joining, sharing the research and the insights in terms of harnessing the power of humans and AI together. There's a link here. There's a QR code that you guys can take a picture of as well. But this is a link to our Human Capital Trends report, as well as another report on skills-based organization.